Welcome to the Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 287, Server Solutions. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live show where we discuss the ins and outs of running your computer repair business. Computer Repair Podcast is brought to you by Ninja RMM, the simple-to-use remote monitoring and management solution. This is all the tools you need in one place to provide preventative maintenance for your clients. Try it free at ninjarmm.com/10off. Now, let me introduce the co-hosts. We have coming back from a long hiatus, Chris Carruthers from Carruthers Computers. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I think I would have changed my tagline to just be famous IT personality.
You work on that.
I will.
Also joining us, we have Adam Carpenter from IT Professionals of Iowa, who is rejoining us again. Adam, how you doing?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Good to have you, man. And a newcomer, and I love seeing new faces on this show. We have James Pinto from OurNerd. James, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good to have you, man. And hopefully nobody is nervous. And if you are, just think of the audience as being sitting around in your underwear. Oh, wait a minute. Most of us probably are because we're behind a computer screen. That's okay. All right, let's go ahead. And Chris, I'm going to kick it off to you since you are a old veteran. I mean, you're not really that old, but anyways,
I thought we agreed no age jokes like months ago, Jeff.
No, we never. I don't ever agree to anything.
Okay.
I'm glad I didn't hear that because my first time on, I was all about it.
Yes, he was. Yep, he started right off. All right, Chris, hit us with a personal tip or story that we could learn from.
Yes. So RMM tools. Now you keep hearing us talking about it. I'm going to tell a story about Ninja RMM. I know that they sponsor the show. They did not pay me for this in any way, shape, or form, but this was great. So client of mine, they tend to buy computers without actually telling me before they're going to go and do it. I find out after they buy it, which is frustrating. However, I still want to support them. I still let them get away with it. They just pay a little bit of extra on the monitoring portion of the service. And lo and behold, the monitoring pays off. Last week, I got 2 alerts from 2 of their computers that they bought on the same day, 24 hours apart, about smart drive failures. So I actually got to find out before the drives failed that they needed to be replaced. Got a tech dispatched out, got all of that taken care of, and it's a good thing that we did because one of the drives actually started clicking during the transfer back. So it was pretty close to catching fire. So if you're not leveraging some sort of a monitoring solution, do it. It's a great way to keep your customers safe, and it's going to earn you that little bit of extra money without needing to go for a full-on data recovery or something along those lines.
Absolutely. That is all what preventative maintenance is about. So that's a great story to hear. All right, Adam, and since you're coming back the second time, I'm going to go ahead and throw the next personal tip or story to you.
All right, I got a story, and I won't go into too many details, but you'll get the point. So basically, late last year, we got called in. We're in a business group, a business networking group, similar to BNI. And we got called in to a new client, and they weren't happy with their current provider, wanted how we do things, and kind of start a new relationship, basically. But at the same time, we're nervous to bring a new person in based on their situation with the old provider and things that weren't being done. And so we came in and gave our recommendations because they needed new network equipment, new firewall, all of that. It was time to get replaced, and they knew that. The problem we ran into is the guy that we were talking to was in IT 13 years ago. 13 years ago and today do not add up. 6 months ago and today are far enough apart, you know. So we came in and gave all of our recommendations. And when we started the relationship, it was supposed to be we would come in hourly as needed until we formed a relationship, basically. Long story short, they went with everything we didn't recommend, and basically we've had to replace it all. So if you're going to ask somebody for their advice that's in the field currently, listen to what they have to tell you, because it's cost them over $20,000 to, with all the hardware that they've put in, the hardware replaced, all of our hourly labor up until we signed the managed services agreement. You know, I mean, it's one of those things. You called somebody because you didn't know, but then you felt you knew enough to do it on your own, and it just didn't work out. So luckily, everything is fixed, replaced. It took a lot longer than it should have, and a lot more money than it should have, But when hardware devices actually fail and you can't do your job, it's pretty easy to say, we told you to do it this way. So.
Now, do you ever run into a situation where they go, well, we don't remember that?
So in this situation, it's a law firm, and the one guy that was in IT 13 years ago basically knew more about IT than everybody else. However, everybody else has enough common sense to go, well, that doesn't make sense, or you're not proving enough to us that this is the way we should go, And then when I come in there and I'm like, well, I'm surprised to see all of this equipment because we recommended this. And then I can go back and show emails. Look, this is what we recommended. This is what we should use. And this is where you're at. And so being able to go in and explain to all the other partners that this is, and since then moving to the stuff that we recommended and it works, we're able to prove that, hey, yeah, we knew what we were talking about. We recommended the right stuff. It is now working for you.
Gotcha. Yeah, it can be frustrating for your customer not to listen to you. And the problem is, in this industry, we basically are at a point where this is constantly a moving target. And if you're not doing something, and this goes with anything, it's not just this industry, it's any industry out there. If you're not constantly doing something, it's going to take you a long time to forget what it is you're doing, or to remember the things and how you did it, and some of the changes that are going on out there, what's new. Tools change all the time. Things that we use change all the time. Different authentication ways changes all the time. Passwords. We've got all these different things that are constantly changing. Equipment. And let's face it, there's still people doing this today. And I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but at the same time, we've got people out there that are using home-based equipment in businesses. And you shouldn't be doing that. There's absolutely not one reason, and everybody will say price. I get it. But then don't provide the service. I mean, there's so many things that could go wrong in those types of situations that you don't want to be a part of it. And not only that, do you want to fix the same stuff over and over again? If I've got a router, a consumer grade router or consumer grade switch, and I'm putting those in these businesses because they don't want to pay the extra money, but they're spending money, or a lot of times people feel bad, and so they don't charge. They're like, well, I recommended this. Oh, no. It's why you don't recommend that stuff. You recommend the good stuff.
Well, and we'll turn down business if they won't go with a business class solution for their business. We will not support a home grade solution for a business, because at the end of the day, when it fails, it's coming back to us. They're going to blame us, regardless of how the conversation went, what they said, or what have you. And so with business class, you can, for firewalls, you could have high availability, or just the next day business replacement on stuff rather than days or sometimes weeks. Right. And if you have a standard solution, even if RMA times are slow, if you have a standard solution, you can keep some of that stuff in stock so you have it and you can deal with the RMA on the back end. That's
true. And there was a question in the chat room, Adam, and that is, what is the name of the network group, if you don't mind sharing?
So for us, it's Corridor Business Builders. It's a local group here in Iowa. So there's just the one location. So.
Is that something you guys just came together in that area to say, hey, we're gonna create this group?
So I wasn't involved in that, but a couple of the members had been to BNI, and for whatever reason didn't really care for the group, or it wasn't working for them, so they pretty much made their own with a different name is what happened.
Okay, cool. Hey, so there's a tip right there. If you can't find a networking group that works for you, man, there's a ton of businesses around your area that you can probably get in contact with and go, hey, let's create our own group that we can meet, collaborate. We're in the same city, same area, whatever, so that we can basically help each other out in our businesses. And again, it's a win-win situation, and you make the rules whatever you want. So yeah, there's all different solutions, whether you do it with a group that's been around for a while or you just do your own. That's awesome.
Well, and you'll find, even if it's BNI is structured so it's supposed to be the same, the culture of the people is different. So maybe just because one BNI group doesn't work, try another one.
Yes, that is true. And the nice thing about BNI is you can only have one person from each industry in that collective group. So a lot of times you might have to go, if there's an IT person in that group, you're going to have to go find another group in the area to become a part of, or when it's starting up, or something along those lines.
Yeah. If there are multiple groups that don't have an IT person, once you join one group, you can visit the other groups.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. You
Good
just pay the breakfast fee or whatever.
Cool. I like it. All right. And last but not least, James, thank you for being so patient.
Oh yeah.
But what is your personal tip or story for us that we could learn from today?
Well, this happened a couple weeks ago. Client that I worked for very little called me up and said that he had lost his accounting software on his computer. I thought, well, you're using QuickBooks, and everyone else, he shares an office. Everyone else in the office hasn't said anything. So I go out there, and apparently he had an old Windows XP computer next to his desk, running some software called Red Wing that I'd never heard of. And sure enough, the icons were gone, the folders were gone. I thought, well, that's unusual. He doesn't turn the computer on all the time, turns it on, now it's not there. So I pulled the hard drive out, realized that the hard drive was failing. So I told him, well, your hard drive's failing, probably not going to get this stuff back. He goes, well, I've got 20 years of data in there. Like, well, okay. So he happened to have an external hard drive that probably a year before he had copied everything to that external hard drive. So we were able to find his data there, but then the problem was installing the old Red Wing software because they don't support it anymore. They've moved on to new version. They basically refused to help us. So we were able to look through all of his files, CDs, floppy disks. We found the installer files. We were finally able to get his program reinstalled, and all but 3 months of his data we were able to recover.
Oh.
So I guess my tip from that would be, make sure your clients aren't running really old computers that you don't know about. And if they're using software that's no longer used, probably want to do some sort of image-based backup so they can restore everything, or just convince them to change software, which he doesn't use it anymore, but he had to look something up from about 3 years ago, which is what caused all this. So that was a fun couple-day project I did.
Wow. Yeah. And hopefully you charged a premium for that because
he got charged.
People don't understand the magic that you just did in order to get that stuff back so that he could use it. And that's why a lot of times I used to tell companies that when they were buying a piece of software that was made for a specific use and it wasn't something that was mainstream out there that everybody was using, but certain industries had their certain software that they wanted that did a certain thing. I said, listen, number one, you're gonna pay for the ongoing updates. Number two, you're gonna pay for the ongoing service so that if something does go wrong, because I don't know that piece of software and I'm not going to learn it. There's absolutely no reason for me to learn that software. I'm going to call somebody and I'll be the intermediary that basically gets the information or lets them remote in or whatever to fix their software. Now, it's not that I can't do that stuff. The problem is you would waste so much time and so much money for me to research it and try to do it myself. I can always find a solution. I always have. I've helped out third level engineers in companies basically solve the problem they couldn't solve. So that's just the way it is. But it took so much time and so much effort that somebody's going to be down for a long time, and it's just not going to be worth it. So make sure that, yeah, you got to have those customers out there, and you run into situations like that all the time. It's funny you said that, James, because I also was, as I'm cleaning stuff up and throwing things away, I'm finding some old data cables, and there's all different sorts of data cables. I can't even remember all the names of them, but I kept them because I'm like, you never know if you run into that one situation where a cable goes down and somebody's got to have this 20-year-old computer, and hopefully this would be a residential type thing, because if I was monitoring for a business, I would let them know. Yeah, no, that's not going to fly. We need to upgrade that right now. So.
Yeah, that quickly turns into a $300 cable, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, and I would get them off of that whatever they're on, anyways. That would be like an intermediary fix. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Chris had mentioned in an older show where he had discovered some other PCs that weren't mentioned when he had first started working with a client. So when I go into a new client, I don't ask for, okay, what are the computers in use? I want to know every machine in the building, whether it's tucked in a closet, if it's under somebody's desk, plugged in or not, because you're going to run into a situation just like this. Oh, well, we don't use it every day, so we didn't think we needed to tell you about it. No, I want every piece of hardware, whether it's plugged in or not.
Yeah, and we have a process for that at this point. So we use ConnectWise, but almost every ticketing system will allow you to do this. We have a project template that's created. So when we onboard a new client, there's a bunch of tickets that get opened and assigned to whoever needs to have it. And one of the tickets is all hardware discovery. And the instruction is exactly that. We need the serial number, make, model, and operating system for every machine in the building, for every piece of networking equipment that's in the building, every printer. I don't care if it connects to the network. We need to have a record of it, because I'm not servicing a machine that isn't in our system.
Now, Chris, this comes to a good point. Now, what do you do about the BYOD as far as phones, tablets, things like that?
Aha, BYOD, we do Jump Cloud for that.
Okay.
Because unless that employee is going to pay for their own service plan, which most of them won't, then we wind up talking to the owner of the company and saying, hey, listen, if you want them to bring their own laptops and computers in, that's fine. We should really take a look at this cloud solution for you, though. So we set up workstation as a service, get all of their users using it. That way, company-owned computers only actually cost about $100, and then employees can use whatever device they want when they bring it in. Plus, they're channel only. They don't go through direct to the customers at all.
Awesome. You know what I like about those businesses is they're channel only.
That's right.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't used any acronyms yet. Trust me, I've got a couple of them in the game.
I'm sure you do. You know what? Sometimes I slip and say them too. So it's almost like cussing. I don't. It makes me mad. Anyways. All right. So let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then we'll get into our main topic. Our show today is brought to you by Ninja RMM, the easy to use, single pane, remote monitoring, and management solution to help you become more efficient, more productive, and more profitable. Ninja RMM understands what you need to help your customers, which is why their RMM solution is integrated with the tools you use every day. With Ninja RMM, you can have a faster fixed response time and offer preventative maintenance to your customers, just like Chris talked about earlier. Prevent those hard drives from failing and get them changed out. That's what we want to do. Ninja RMM provides patch management, antivirus, email, SMS alerting. You can be up and running quickly with minimum training time, which is awesome for me because I don't have the time to sit here and go to school and learn this stuff. Plus, there are no contracts, so you can focus less on stress and more on your customers. Ninja RMM offers things like remote support. Ever use TeamViewer? Backup, Cloudberry, antivirus, WebRoot. These are things that people use all the time, and these are integrated products that you can use with your RMM solution using Ninja. You have network visibility inside your RMM, easy to read dashboards, and a powerful device search to create custom queries and export the list to keep your customers up to date on the hard work you do for them. So they know you're not just sitting around eating some donuts and drinking a cup of coffee and looking at a computer screen. You're actually getting stuff done. So they like to know those things. Oh yeah, we just protected you from, oh look at, hey, you've been probed like 1 million times and we stopped that, or whatever. All right, Ninja RMM is offering Podnutz listeners a free 30-day trial, and when you decide to buy, a 10% discount. Take advantage of this offer. Go to ninjarmm.com/10off. All right, so this topic was brought to us by none other than James. And before we get started, let me say one more thing that I forgot to bring up earlier. Is probably my personal tip or story, and that is John Davinsky is taking a short little hiatus to enjoy the rest of the summer with his family. And for those that are going to the ITO Compass here in a few weeks, you will see him down there. And then he will come back in September. He's just taking the weekend off to basically do something other than tech, which I don't blame him, because he does tech like 24/7, it seems, a lot of times. So I'm all for going and hanging out with the fam and doing something other than talk about this stuff. So, but we'll look forward to having him back in September.
Slacker.
That's awesome. So anyways, James had sent John an email and was talking about server deployment and some of the things that he was coming up with. And he wanted to ask John some questions on what he did as far as servers. So James, can you give us an overhead view of basically what had went on in the conversation, what you had asked John, and what types of things you guys had come up with as far as server deployment?
Yeah, I had basically asked John in his businesses that he services, because I do similar to what he does as far as dentist and things like that. If he does any virtualization as far as servers go. I haven't done any for many of my clients. Most of my clients are small enough to where one physical server is more than enough for what they need. This one particular client, they're one of my bigger clients. And they had a power issue a few weeks ago. And after that power issue, their server was just acting all kinds of goofy. It took about a week to finally get the crazy thing working right for them. They were functioning. They were just functioning slowly. So I'd asked John what he thought about virtualization. If he thought it'd be a good idea for this client, if we did, like 2 or 3 virtual servers instead of just one physical server. We kind of talked back and forth. I've kind of landed on avoiding the virtual server just because I'm not an expert in it, and I don't really want to become an expert at their expense in this instance. Because I've recently brought on another new client from another firm, out of town firm, and they have them set up with 3 virtual servers and 1 physical server, which I think might be kind of overkill because they only have 20 employees, so they're running 4 servers for 20 employees. But I didn't know, so I just kind of asked John his opinion on that too. If he thought, do we really need this many servers for this amount of people? Because all they're running is domain controller and a SQL server. That's all they're doing.
That was it. They were doing that. Sorry, they were doing that on 4 servers, just the 2 functions.
The client with 4 servers, they're using 1 just for backup. So 1 server is running Veeam, 1 server is running the domain controller, 1 server is running SQL server, and 1 is their terminal server, which maybe 1 or 2 people will use a day, maybe. And that's what they had.
Okay.
Wow.
To me, it seemed like overkill, but I didn't know. I thought maybe there was a good reason to have that many servers, but
yeah, someone wanted money.
Probably.
That or they came from an enterprise environment where you separate everything, and they just didn't know any different.
Well, yeah, and you've got to know your client base, and you've got to know the size of what you're dealing with. Because you're right, if a lot of people do come from the enterprise background, but you're not doing thousands. You're doing, even when you're in the, low 50 or 50s to 100s, it's still, that seemed a little overkill even to me. So the conversation you had with John, and basically it sounds like you landed on not doing any virtualization and doing a 1 physical server to do what you needed to do.
Right.
Now, the reason I called this server solutions is because I want to know from everybody on this panel what people are doing today for servers, because there are many different things that people will call a server. A lot of times back in the day, and even today I see it, you will see a server, which is basically nothing other than a workstation that might have a QuickBooks database that is shared amongst a few people on a network. Then you will have a NAS that will basically share files between different people on that network. And then you have a full-blown server with Active Directory where you have full control over the ins and outs of who can have access to what, and keep certain people locked out of certain things, and have group policies that will make sense for even sometimes 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people. So what is it that you are seeing, James, in your business as far as the types of servers that you're putting out there, or that you are using today as far as in your business?
3. If the client is a small client, which most of mine are, and they are not using QuickBooks, I will typically put in a Synology NAS for them. All they need is file sharing. Maybe they need Apple, whatever it's called, Time Machine. Then I'll just put a NAS in for them. If they're using QuickBooks, though, I haven't found a good way to do the QuickBooks server and utilize a NAS. So in that case, I'll just put in a like a Windows Essential server for them. And then the bigger clients who need QuickBooks or they need SQL, all that, then I'll go with Windows Server Standard for those with full domain controller, all that. But I have very few clients doing that because, like I said, a lot of my clients are a lot smaller. It's overkill for what they're doing. So it's typically the NAS or just the Windows Essential server.
Okay, awesome. Chris, what about you?
Well, first off, you're not going to find a good way to make QuickBooks run on a NAS.
Yeah, I've been looking and looking.
I'm going to tell you won't, because they'll tell you that it won't work. So there's that. Hey, Jeff, do you remember what my favorite brand of diapers are?
No, depends.
Depends. Oh, come on. I'm sorry. I know it's an old bad joke. So we have a lot of different solutions for a lot of different clients, and it does depend on what their setup is, because you've got a huge difference between someone with great internet, someone that maybe doesn't have the best internet, someone that has a lot of functions for the server to run, someone who doesn't. What I'm finding more and more is when we're getting into the 5 to 15 employee range in a lot of these companies, then having everything virtualized actually runs really, really well. So that's really what we've been pushing on. What we did is we partnered with Pax8 to use a service called Cloud Jumper. I'll give Jeff all the links for the show notes. And essentially what we do is we virtualize everything. We virtualize the workstation, we virtualize the server. So everything can be accessed from any device. That way they have barely any support costs when it actually comes to the support. We actually include everything for $150 a workstation, including the computer if needed. We send them a little HDMI Intel Compu stick to use for those. And that's kind of our go-to solution. If they have less employees than that, or if they're a charity, because charities do have crazy big discounts off of the cost of the server licenses, then we'll stick with a physical server. I haven't come across a charity that needs more than one server. And if it's a larger enterprise, then we need to take a look at, okay, how many locations do you have? What do you need the server to do? The virtualization may be the better option, especially if they have a lot of different locations, or if they have employees working from home as well, or if they only have a couple of locations, then setting up a multi-site VPN with a domain controller and a couple of sub servers would do that fine. But yeah, really, you need to adapt yourself to your clients, and you need to do your research before you actually quote anything, because everybody's going to be different, and your solution has to match that.
Now, as far as for your charity size servers that you were talking about, what do they use a server for inside that?
Usually it's a file share or a QuickBooks server. And then because most charities have to gather information from their clients, then you need to make sure that you're following either HIPAA or PIPEDA or whatever privacy rules you have to follow based on where you are. That said, the virtualization, that is all certified for all of that stuff. But for me to go to a charity and say, okay, you have to pay $150 per workstation, they're just not going to do it. Whereas, a regular bit, because they get, $50 they spend on, Windows Server Essentials plus, $500 for the hardware. Why would you spend that? Whereas, you know, the larger clients or the regular business clients, they're going to spend a lot more for their servers, so it makes a little more sense.
Okay. Adam, what are you using?
So for us, we're similar to James. What we like to do is server essentials. That fits most of our clients. And there's several reasons for that. We like the manageability of the workstations and permissions and shares and GPOs, you know, group policy, push all that, the shared drives and those things out. Another thing is a lot of our clients fall under some sort of compliance. So we really like to have the logging and we can say, you know, these are the permissions that were set if something happens. Now, we briefly discussed earlier, we only provide business class solutions that we can stand behind. So we will not support a desktop as a server. If they don't need a server for whether it be compliance reasons or they're more than, you know, 5 users or so, we'll go with a NAS if they just need file shares and they don't have QuickBooks or any applications that need to run there. That's typically our scenarios.
Okay. Sounds good. So now let me ask you guys, as far as, and let's break these down a little bit. Obviously, a NAS, I think most people have at one point or another probably played with a NAS, and a NAS stands for Network Attached Storage. And it's basically storage. It's basically a Linux operating system that's running in the background, just a real light and easy with some hard drives. And basically that hooks up to the network, and you can, depending on whether it's a Synology, QNAP, whatever it might be, there's different functionalities and different software things that you can do as far as backups and sharing files and all that kind of stuff. So that's basically a NAS. Now, just to let everybody know, the last time I've actually touched a server was server 2003. So it's been a while.
Oh.
And yeah, I'd rather stick 2 forks in my eye than deal with any of that stuff. But that's just me. So anyways, it's not that I can't or won't. It's just I prefer not to. But from that standpoint, I'm wondering what, as far as a regular server where you're doing essentials or whatever flavor you're using, what is it that you are using in that server for your clients? And I know it's going to depend on size, but what are the different things that you might do with that server so everybody can kind of get an idea of things that are still being done today? Who wants to start?
I'll go. So for us, really, like I said, the biggest things are group policy. It makes it very easy to set permissions, shares, and you can get a lot more auditing set up with those. We do a lot of printer deployments as well, which makes it very nice. Now, I know that you can do a lot of these things with an NAS. However, we support Windows environments mostly, so it's nice to use the native tools.
I agree with you there. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier in most cases. All right, Chris, how about you? What do you use a regular server for if you are deploying a regular server?
Yeah, I mean, security, right, is the biggest thing. If I'm rolling out a server for somebody that doesn't specifically need it, it's going to be because we want to control user access. We want to make sure that you have, you know, your segmented groups within the different users for accessing whatever folders or programs they need. You know, if you're not deploying it as a full MSP using an RMM, then you can kind of, you know, set up patch management through the server as well, so that you can at least make sure that things are getting pushed out that need to be there. There are also a lot of clients that are going to need it. Maybe you need a SQL server running something. Maybe you're running QuickBooks and you need to have that shared, which I really, really do not recommend having a workstation sharing that. And a huge thing that I'm starting to notice is when you have a mixed environment. So anybody that has people hardcore still holding on to Windows 7, they're bringing on new Windows 10 machines, thanks to Microsoft's update, a month ago, I think it was, removing home groups from Windows 10. You know, that caused huge problems with file sharing in a networked environment like that. So deploying a physical server and using that as a file share server and a print share server has really alleviated a lot of that pain.
Oh, home groups. Who needs home groups? Please.
You know, when you have a user managing their own stuff, okay, because sometimes you don't have an MSP IT professional. all
Well,
the
that's
time.
where they're wrong in the first place, right there. So
You and I both know that, but sometimes we have to put a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid, Jeff.
all right, James, what about you? What do you use a regular server for?
Really only three things. QuickBooks would be probably the biggest reason. File sharing, and then the only other reason is if they're running software, dental software that requires SQL or some other form of database that the software uses. That's really the only three reasons I use it. And of course, the dental clients using GPOs and the domain controller, all the functionality of that, I use that too. But really those three things: QuickBooks, file sharing, and just whatever special software they need hosted on a server.
So how important do you guys think that Active Directory is, or your group policies? How important are those moving forward? Do you see those things going by the wayside, or is that something that people, because I've seen a lot of people that have kind of gotten away from that and have started to look at cloud solutions, which there's a couple out there, nothing to, nothing that tickles my fancy at this point. There might be some that work. I'm not 100% out on the cloud. Just like, listen, if you use wireless or connecting to the internet, your internet will suck most of the time. If you use hardwire, your hardwire will work great most of the time. That's just the way it is. That's a reality. Whether people want to believe it or not, doesn't really matter. That's the truth. But so you guys see Active Directory and things like that on the server level being used going forward, or is it important to the things that you are doing in your business right now?
Well, I mean, I guess the biggest question we have to ask is, are certifications going to go away? Or what about, dealing with I'm going to try to avoid acronyms for you, Jeff. If you're dealing with the credit card industry.
I just
right,
ignore you anyways.
If you're dealing with the credit card industry, right, then, there are certifications that you have to have for your network to be able to do that. PCI, I can't stay away from it. If you're dealing with HIPAA, if you're dealing with PIPEDA, if you're dealing with any of the security acts or the privacy acts, you do need to have a certain level of control over the network that's really difficult not to have with a solution that isn't Active Directory, especially as you start to scale and you have more and more people involved with the network. So no, I don't see it going away anytime soon. I think it's one of the bigger and better known ways of handling everything, and I think it's one of the ones that has the lowest level of support compared to, say, putting everything in a Linux environment or putting everything in a Mac environment. I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with security on servers like that, dealing with individual users, but Linux is more secure but harder to manage, and I'm not even going to start talking about the Mac servers.
Yeah, we love Linux.
Yeah.
Not. No, I mean, there's a place for everything. Don't get me wrong. But here's the thing: we are supporting predominantly Windows environments. That's not ever going away. Again, I've said this in the past. I'll say it once again. This is called the McDonald's effect. Okay, McDonald's was not the first franchise, but guess what? You could take all the fast food restaurants. You could combine their gross income for the year, and McDonald's will blow all of them combined away. Why? McDonald's was one of the first popular ones out there. So they've got a hold on the consumers. Well, Windows is no different. And I know everybody wishes and hopes and prays that it's not that way. Sorry. This is the way life works. I don't know what to tell you. You can sit there and try to deny it all day long, or you can just realize that this is in fact a truth and it's something we have to deal with. So this is what we're supporting. So I get it. James, what as far as the Active Directory is important for your business?
I think it's mostly important for my clients who have to be HIPAA compliant, basically. In fact, those are really the only ones that I even utilize Active Directory for, just for that reason. All my other clients don't need or use Active Directory. And I kind of think that's probably where we're going. I think Active Directory for a lot of people is overkill. They don't need it for anything. But if they're medical, they do. We need to control logins. We need to control password policies, all kinds of stuff using that Active Directory. So that's kind of how I see it.
Okay, good. Adam?
So I'm with Chris. I don't think Active Directory is going anywhere. And you can see that from Microsoft. Every time they release a new server version, there's tons of new group policy preferences or features that are added. So for us, it's mainly policy type stuff or requirements, HIPAA, those types of things. But even if you take a step back and the simplest thing with Active Directory is just the ease of making company-wide changes or policies, passwords and computers locking, after 15 minutes or whatever it may be, just as simple as that. But also a lot of the software we manage ties into Active Directory for logins, or, even network hardware. You can tie in LDAP or Active Directory authentication, so you can sign in with that kind of stuff. Our RMM tool integrates with Active Directory as well, so I don't see it going anywhere. I think it makes managing the machines a lot easier. It also makes sure that, now if you have 5 machines, it's no big deal to go make the changes to all those machines. But if you have 10 or more, it could certainly changing passwords on all those could take a lot longer. Plus, it helps that all of the machines are set up the same way, right? Because we want standardization in our environments, and that really helps you get that. If you push out one policy to all machines, they're all the same.
That's a good point. The other thing, too, is a lot of people, this is something, and you probably see this a lot more in a enterprise environment, and the only reason I know is because I still see it today, and I still have to use it, is multiple logins. So you'll have basically dumb workstations, for lack of better terms, and I can log in, my partner can log in, another person can log in, and we all have our separated logins for that computer. We can do certain things on it. We can, surf the internet, find our file systems or whatever it is we're doing, find the file shares out there that we're using. So there are still a lot of places that will use that type of environment where maybe they don't have an assigned computer to that particular person. Now, again, we're getting this fine line where I'm thinking that the way of the desktop is probably slowly going away, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I would think a lot of people, for the mobility, the ease of use of bringing in a laptop, you can bring in a laptop, hook it up to a dock with a screen, a keyboard, and mouse, and when that person, if they need to take that particular machine home, they can, or at least it's easier to move around, probably takes up less space, that type of thing. But anyways, where do you guys see as far as those types of computers hooking onto the network?
Well, I mean, roaming profiles are nice. I was just thinking that while you were talking about everybody connecting to one computer. Look, I don't think the desktops are going away per se. I think that the way that we're going to look at workstations are going to change. I think that BYOD is really changing the landscape for us and the way that we have to think about security. But I doubt that we're going to see massive migration to employee-owned laptops or even company-owned laptops for employees in a lot of cases. Some of the environments that I can think of right now are call centers, right? You're not going to see laptops being brought into a place like that. You'd be faster to see something like the Computa 6 and using a terminal services login before you're going to see that. Police stations, right? Hospitals, those types of places where they're either going to, they're always going to have the desktops in the main work areas. They might start giving the doctors tablets, which I'm starting to see more and more happening. So there are definitely environments where it does not suit them to have a portable device that you really do want to have something affixed.
Well, actually, I mean, I don't know. Oh, wait, that's right. You're from Canada. That's been happening for years here. Everybody carries around a tablet in these doctor's offices, all the ones I went to in probably the last 10 years. And basically, well, I take that back. They did start off with smaller laptops, and now they've migrated to these tablets. The funny thing is, here we think about technology, and this is a side tangent. We think about technology and how it's supposed to make our lives easier. The problem is it takes 4 times the amount of time to do the paperwork on a tablet or a little laptop than it does to do it with physical paper and pen. 4 times.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay.
4
Okay.
times.
But the law requires that all of that to be digitized, which means that, yes, it might take the doctor at first, and I'm going to say at first because the doctor's office that I deal with has gotten faster because they kept at it and they stopped complaining about it. I'm not getting into this. Once you get up there, you may be looking at double the time, right, for the person that's actually doing the paperwork. But you're also taking away all of the time that it takes to scan those documents in, find the right patient profile, put it all in there, which you're paying one of the nurses or the doctor themselves per hour to sit there and deal with that, unless their salary, in which case you're taking time out of their day to do all of that anyway, right? This way it's all streamlined and all is done at first. I can also just about guarantee, though, that those same places that you're talking about where the doctors and the nurses are walking around with tablets, that your intake is still being done from a desktop. There's still going to be desktops up in the IT room. There's going to be desktops in some of the back office rooms because you can't do everything from it. So yes, you're right. The tablet thing is slowing things down a bit on a per patient basis on patient facing, but it is speeding things up on the back end so that they're able to see more patients in a day.
I don't care about on the back end. All I care about is me.
Okay, but what about your wait time in? Oh wait, I'm sorry, you're in the U.S. You don't have to deal with our wait times. I can tell you, as a Canadian who has access to free healthcare, when I have to wait in line to get in to see the doctor, that type of a system does speed up how quickly you get into the room to be seen by a doctor. So you're at the hospital less time overall, even if the visit itself seems to take longer because the doctor's standing there putting things into a tablet.
I don't know what universe you're thinking in right now, but okay, I'm going to go with that.
Sure.
Anyways, that was a side tangent. Okay, so back to the server. So obviously, my whole tangent about desktops. Yes, you're right. There's going to be desktops at the front desk. There's going to be servers, obviously, for HIPAA compliance and all these other compliances. Obviously, if you're taking money, your PCI compliance and all that. So there are things that servers are going to be used for. Now, I guess I look at a lot of these. What do you guys consider to be a small, a medium, and a large environment? And there are no wrong answers. I'm curious what everybody's thoughts. So I'm going to start with Adam. I'm going to shoot it off to you.
Sure. One quick thing on Active Directory first. Active Directory can make employee onboarding and offboarding much faster and easier as well. Onboarding, you can clone other users because typically you're going to add a user to a group that matches somebody else. So you can clone them so they automatically have all the groups they need. Offboarding, you can just disable their account and they lose access to pretty much everything right off the start. So get that out of the way. Now, for us, yeah, for small, medium, and large, everybody's going to be different. So we don't touch any enterprise stuff. For us, a small client is up to about 10 users. Medium client is up to around 20 or so. And then above that for us is large. But, you know, everybody's going to be different on that.
I'm just curious. I'm just asking, throwing it out there. Chris?
Yeah, for us, it's small is 1 to 5. Medium is 5 to 20. And then anything over 20 is considered large.
Okay, so we're in the same ballpark. James?
Pretty much the same. 1 to 5 small, 5 to 15 or 20 medium, 20 or more is large for me.
Okay. Yeah, I think those are kind of the numbers out there anyways. I was always, well, you know, I've heard, actually that's not true. So I've heard on different podcasts that people will say like a 50-person or even 100-person environment is still considered small. Again, in what universe is that true? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. But okay, I guess if there is a magical number out there, and if anybody knows what the official numbers are, you can throw that out there. But just because somebody said they're official doesn't mean they're right. So I agree with you guys.
I think that if you have 5 or more employees yourself, you can't call anything small unless the company that you're working for has less employees than you do.
That's a good point. Okay. All right. So we've looked at things like Active Directory. We're seeing the importance of, and I like Adam's point too, is that, yeah, you can go in there, you can disable somebody's account. You've got quick access. And I think a couple of you guys had said that too, that you've got more control over the environment. So we don't really see servers going away. But I think it depends on the environment that we're going into and what that particular client needs. So as far as, obviously, NASs are pretty simple. I think you can share equipment there. Let's take a let's find out though. What NAS do you guys prefer?
We do Synology.
Okay.
Synology.
Okay.
Oh, Buffalo, Black Sheep.
Buffalo, isn't it like consumer grade stuff there?
But to be fair, the only time that I ever actually break down and use a NAS is either in a home office environment or with the 5 or less employees. After that, you're looking at a server or you're looking at virtualization.
Don't get me wrong. I'm being facetious because they're all pretty similar as far as their operating environments. I mean, I have, everybody can see behind me, I have a Synology, and it works great. But man, was it a learning curve to figure out exactly what I could do or couldn't do with it. It was just nuts. I was making I wanted it for a pure backup. And I threw a couple drives in there. I thought, this will be easy. Well, the first time I went to set it up, I had made basically kind of like just a share, like OneDrive, where it was syncing back and forth. And I'm like, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted just to back my files up to that and, keep so many versions and whatnot, so that if I ever got compromised and needed to go back into a couple of uncompromised versions, I could do that. So that's all I have the Synology do. But yeah, the learning curve on that. So as far as using something in your business, and I think everybody said this too, is that you want to use something that you know and understand. So again, eat your own dog food, use it in your own environment. That way, when you're putting it out there in other customers' hands, that you can much more easily take care of them. So I think that's definitely an important tip.
One thing you want to keep in mind too is you're not just putting something in place for yourself and the customer. You also have to keep in mind who's going to come in after you and support this network. I'm a fan of Linux myself. We have Linux servers for some things in our office, but I'm not going to put Linux in most of my customers' offices, because the fact is most techs, now I know there's a lot of Linux techs out there, but most people can walk in and support a Windows network without too much trouble. So you got to keep that in mind too.
Well, yes, there's a lot of Linux techs out there that support Windows environments. So let's put that caveat out there. I'm not saying it, like I said, there is Linux has got some phenomenal tools, and I'm not sure that it's any easier to use than Windows or anything else. I think they all have a fairly steep learning curve in order to do the things you want to do. No different than an Android phone or an iPhone. Hey, you want it stupid simple, use an iPhone. If you want something that gives you some power and control, use Android. That's just my opinion. Other people will differ, but whatever. And most of you are probably carrying iPhones, aren't you? I just offended my whole audience.
We don't need them anyway.
All right. So as far as going back to the servers, is there anything that you guys can think of as far as server solutions that we haven't touched on yet that would be important to bring to light to what people need to think about when they're thinking about deploying one of these versions of a server? Are you talking, Adam? Because I don't hear you. You physically mute yourself.
Is that any better?
That's better.
Yeah.
All right.
You said not to use that button.
Good. Yeah. So the reason we won't support a workstation as a server is because there's no redundancy. So with a NAS, you can get redundant drives. You can get some models with redundant power supplies, and that's the same as a server. You have built-in redundancy. So you set up a RAID configuration, a drive dies, no big deal. you wait for it to come in, you put it in, and you keep going. So redundancy is a big thing for actual hardware on why we would go with a server route or NAS and not just a workstation.
Okay. Any other thoughts out there?
Look, if it's already in place by the technician that was there before, then we will support it asterisk. Because it's not going to be covered if there's a sharing issue. It's not going to be covered if that data is lost. I mean, we'll back up the data, but you can back up a QuickBooks file, but that doesn't mean that it's all going to rebuild when you restore it, right? So there's a lot of reasons why we're going to tell our client we really need to make a change on this. However, we will still onboard a client that's currently using a workstation as a sharing system. I refuse to use the word server here. Simply because that's a minor thing to turn somebody away on, as long as they're willing to sign off on the consequences. Most of our clients within the first 6 months will either switch to a NAS or a server. Those that don't, they know the risks that they're taking, and most of them have gotten bit at least once by a share stopping all of a sudden or something else happening where everybody just loses access, because maybe it's a Windows 7 machine that was using a home group and then Windows 10 updated.
Nice. James?
So,
go ahead, Ed. Good.
For us, when I say we won't support it, what I'm saying, when we onboard the customer, we'll support it for now, but we're going to have a plan set in place to replace this device when we sign the contract.
Absolutely.
As far as the workstation.
You have to have a plan moving forward. We understand we can't spend your thousands of dollars today, but we need to set up some sort of budget so that we can slowly change this stuff over and get you, whether it's compliant or get you to where you need to be. I mean, everything takes time, and that's understandable. But a lot of people will just go, okay, they'll just deal with it forever. And it's like, no, that's not what we do here. So that's good. That's good. James?
Well, I've got a couple clients actually using workstations as a server. And the reason they are is when they replaced their original workstation as a server, they only had, this one client had 4 employees. And they didn't want to spend a whole lot of money and buy a full-blown server. So we went the workstation route with RAID 1 in it. So that worked for them. Now they're getting to the point where they have grown quite a bit, and we're probably getting to the point where we need to go ahead and think about going with an actual server because they use QuickBooks. We can't go the NAS route for them. And a similar situation for the other client. When we started them out, they were really small. They only needed it for QuickBooks. They've grown. We're probably getting to the point now where we're going to have to go ahead and go the server route for them. So I'm not opposed to taking on those clients who have a server like that, because around here, a lot of my clients, they're really small, 5 people, 3 people. Server was probably overkill for them. And in some cases, we can go the NAS route, but if they're using QuickBooks, we're kind of stuck. So
you have to have a Windows environment to do that.
You have to. But I'm not against, for the situation, if the situation calls for it, I'm not against going the workstation just for file serving or for QuickBooks. And then, of course, we make sure we're running some sort of image-based backup as well as an online backup. So if something does happen hardware-wise, at least we can recover them fairly quickly.
So what do you guys do for warranty in this point? So for us, our contract states equipment needs to be covered under warranty. Now, again, you're going to have the caveat when you onboard a client, most of the time, nothing is going to be under warranty. We'll support it, we'll cover it, but when time comes for replacement, we require somewhere between 3 and 5 year hardware or next business day warranty on those devices. So now, if I was in a situation where I was supporting a workstation as a server, it would be required to be covered under warranty. Because typically, yeah, you can do a RAID 1 on a workstation, but you get into, is it onboard like software RAID, or we're kind of going down a rabbit hole here, but there's a lot of situations where I want to know I have a business class solution with a tier 1 vendor behind the hardware that I'm supporting.
Well, you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, for these 2 examples I had, they were new Dell Optiplex machines, I believe, with hardware RAID controllers in them. I believe they each had a 3-year warranty on them. as far as what I require for warranties, I actually don't. Most of my clients, I'd say majority of them are all break fix. I only have 3 or 4 managed clients. Those are the ones who want to spend more money, are willing to spend more money, I should say. So for me, as far as warranty, hardware warranty goes, I just let them know that, you know, what we're putting in may not last as very long. May have to replace it. And I always make sure we have good backups going, but that's really what I do for that.
Now, Adam, that's a good point too, though, as far as now you're requiring the hardware warranty on server stuff, not workstation stuff, right?
No, all equipment.
Okay.
So, and we're a Dell partner, so we typically do the Optiplex and Latitude for workstations and stuff. But equipment usually comes through us. Most of our clients don't want to spend the time or bother trying to figure out what they need. They get it through us, and we just say all equipment comes. We let them choose 3 to 5 years, but once that warranty expires, normally we try to have a replacement cycle in place. And usually we'll go 1 to 2 years past warranty before we do a recycle. We figure if it's been that long, it's probably going to be okay. But if they decide, you know, let's say they have a 4-year warranty and it's time for replacement, and they decide, well, we don't want to replace it at this time, well, then those devices are going to cost more if something happens hardware related that aren't covered.
Okay. That's a good point. Chris, what were you going to say?
Well, what I was going to say is, you know, for the most part, because we want to get everybody onto warranted machines as well, a lot of companies have huge they really hold back on that. So we use a program called Warranty Master, which integrates in with the Ninja RMM and with ConnectWise. So we have all the dates. We make a report and we say, look, we need to replace these machines by this date. So here's the budget to have that done by this date. Is this something that you can do? And if they say no, then we're going to work with them. But what we're not going to do is step back and say, oh, okay, well then this doesn't need to be done. Then we'll just wait for something to break. What we say instead is, look, this is what we need to do, or we need to take a look at virtualization, because by this date, this is not supported anymore. We're really pushing that right now with Windows 7 clients and saying, look, your hardware is already way out of warranty, but now by 2020, it's not even going to be supported by Microsoft anymore on extended. So we need to get this replaced before then. And here's the solutions on how to do it. If they're not willing to do that, then they're going to pay a lot more money for support, because they're going to be getting support for out of warranty systems. We're not going to provide managed services for those clients, because we can't provide managed services for, well, I mean, we can, but we won't provide managed services for something that's that old. And it sounds harsh, but when the clients realize that, you know, we're not willing to go for that extra mile for them unless they're willing to meet us halfway, they either aren't the client for you and they're not going to do it, or they're going to realize that you're putting in this effort for them and they're going to step up and do their part.
Well, and I think from a standpoint of, you know, obviously the warranties and all that kind of stuff, I agree with that. It's good to have those in place. The time that you basically move from one computer to another, whether it be 3, 5, I've heard 7 years, that's going to vary. And I think a lot of times when you're looking at these systems, I basically think once they break, a lot of times they're not repaired and they're replaced at that point. And I think that's what a lot of people deal with, especially if you're coming into an environment that you have inherited everything that's there. But yeah, I think you need to move towards some sort of standard. And I'm not sure, you know, warranty, I mean, even on a basic warranty, you can get a basic year, but the extended warranties that Dell, HP, Lenovo offer are actually phenomenal for the price, and you might as well throw that in. And peace of mind, right?
Yeah.
I think it's even more important for things like servers and stuff like that, because here's the other question we're going to go into here. As far as doing, like, we talked about image backups, what about bare metal restores? Does anybody have the need for that at this point? Is that going to become something that a lot of people they need that redundancy, as you guys have said, to be back up and running to do whatever it is they do in their offices?
So for us, we've never had the need to do a bare metal restore at this point. So that's not to say it won't happen. At this point, we haven't.
Okay.
Normally, if we have a user where a drive fails, a lot of our clients don't want to back up workstations. And we tell them, look, the server's backed up. It's got redundancy. The network shares are there. Put your data there. It's your problem, not ours if you don't, basically. So if a workstation goes down for a day, it's usually not the end of the world. We get the replacement part, whatever, we put it back in. And with a pretty basic image, install their software and their backup. So for us, it hasn't been a big deal.
Okay.
Same as Adam. Haven't really done anything with bare metal restore. Got some image-based backups and a lot of online backups, but that's about it.
Now, are you backing up servers and workstations, or just servers?
Mostly servers. A few workstations, mostly servers.
All right, Chris.
Mostly we're sticking with file-based backup. There's a couple of instances where we're using image-based backup just for restoration time, but I can't think of a single client that we have bare metal set up for.
Okay.
I wonder if John's cringing listening to this.
Well, don't get me. There's not a lot of people that are doing that. Period. I mean, that's again the cost. It's an awesome service, and if you've got to be up and running, again, it's like anything else. There are true emergencies, like when your house is on fire and you got to get out. And then there's these self-induced, I think it's an emergency. To me, it's almost like the house is on fire because I can't get to my server, but it's really not. Grab a piece of paper and a pen and do whatever it is you do for the most part. Now, if you're working in CAD or something like that, okay, maybe that's another issue. Now, from that standpoint, Adam mentioned something that I always find interesting. And that is how many people keep stuff on their workstation desktops.
Everybody.
And how many times you have to remind them that this needs to be on the server so it's backed up.
Well, Jeff, if you're using Active Directory and you're using roaming profiles, then it is on the server.
Or folder redirection.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right, though. I mean, a lot of people save things on their desktop, and the policy that we have in place is that during training, or at least as an email blast during onboarding, every single employee is made aware that anything that's on their desktop is not backed up unless they're paying for a workstation backup. Like one of our larger clients, everybody knows don't save anything on the desktop except for the accountant who has a workstation backup. So, there's instances.
Yeah, but you just saw a deer in headlights, and they have no idea what you just said to them. To me, that person was sitting there, and this is what they heard. Wah, 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 wah.
Well, Jeff, very clearly your onboarding training is not nearly as Look, you can't if you're onboarding 50 employees, right? You only have one of two things that you can do here: send out an email blast or set up a webinar training, right? And I mean, you can set up a webinar training and tell them, don't save things here, save things here. Or you can send them an email that says, don't save things here, save things here. If I'm telling everybody, make sure you save everything to the S drive because the S drive is where things are safe. S is for safe. They get that.
And seriously, that's what you tell them. S is for safe.
S is for safe.
Okay.
I have said S for share, and that doesn't seem to really grasp sometimes because you don't always share everything. Sometimes you have your own personal folder in the S drive.
I like that.
So S is for safe.
Okay.
So most of our clients are under 20 users, so everybody pretty much knows everybody within the company, right? So if something happens, eventually everybody's going to find out. And what I mean by that is if somebody loses a file, pretty much that story is going to travel through the whole office. So it's only going to take one person's bad experience to go, oh, you know what? I should probably do this the right way. Unfortunately, with backups, that's usually the way it works. Nobody cares until they've lost something.
Right. Exactly. All right, James, what about you?
Well, I don't know. I don't have anything to add to that.
I mean, do you see your customers keeping a lot of stuff on their desktops as far as if they do, are they backing those up or no?
A lot of my customers actually don't. The majority of my customers, all they're ever using is QuickBooks. And the ones who are doing a lot of files, I do have them set up with shared drives, and they are trained to use those shared drives. So the majority of my customers, if their computer were to crash, their workstation were to crash, that's not really a big deal. And the ones that are, those are the few that we do have on file-based online backups, or they're using a shared drive, or they're just using QuickBooks where all the information's on the server anyway. So,
all right, I know that this is going to be a funny question, but I want an answer anyways. How many people actually use Windows backup?
Actually, we have a server running Windows backup, and it just works. It just works. We've had very good luck with it. There's only one client that's using that, but it works pretty well.
Now, is that an image-based backup, or is that a file-based backup?
Image-based.
Okay. All right.
I've got 3 people using it.
Okay.
What?
You know what? And there's a reason I ask these questions, not to be silly, but at the same time, I looked at for certain clients that might have been something that it was better than nothing, and to have that local backup. Obviously, a lot of people are using cloud backup, and everybody knows I use Carbonite, and they used to do an image backup. They don't do that anymore. I don't know why. Whatever. Anyways, so it's hard to find unless I want to put another piece of software on there. Now I could use Acronis and, just buy the license, put it on there, not a big deal. But I find that maybe even Acronis for an image-based backup is going to be overkill if all their files are saved in the cloud. So,
yeah, the three people I have using it, they're using it because it, of course, is free. And they didn't want to do anything. They didn't want to spend money on anything else, but they needed something. So we just set them up with Windows backup.
Now, let me ask this question. And since you guys know, because you guys are using it, can you go inside that image and pull files from there? Or is it just an image that you can use for restore?
So I've been able to go in and pull files.
Okay. It's as long as it's in a Windows environment, right? It should be able
Correct.
to see. Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. Now, typically we prefer to run our backups through our RMM, but we do have the one solution, and we've actually talked about adding that to our contract. Look, you need to have a good managed backup, but we haven't done that. But that reminds me, we should look into that.
There you go. All right, good. All right, cool. All right, so go ahead, Chris.
Do you guys know if there is any way to have your RMM monitor the Windows backup? Because that's like when I laugh, I'm not worried about the technology failing. What I'm worried about is if the backup doesn't happen, who's going to know?
That is a big problem. And we use N-Central, and there are some limited capabilities, but it's certainly nothing like the built-in backup, the ISO-based backup that we use.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons we don't like to use it, but it is an option.
See, and that right there is why I will never tell a customer that it exists.
Okay.
SolarWinds has a... go ahead.
In this case, it was one that was inherited. It was already set up. So it's certainly not something we put in place to begin with, and we just haven't moved them. But yeah, so SolarWinds RMM and N-Central use the same backup, which is ISO-based.
And SolarWinds does have a basic monitoring for the Windows backup. The 3 clients that I have using it are in my managed program, so I don't use it with SolarWinds, but I know SolarWinds does have that check in there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering if that's just the service or if that's a successful backup, though.
It does. It's supposedly, anyway, according to the description, it checks for a backup from whatever day you tell it, any day of the week. It'll check for a successful backup. Okay. Whether or not it works, I don't know, but that's what it says.
Well, in the only way that that absolutely works, you can't depend on an RMM or anybody else, Windows included, telling you that something worked. You have to go and do a restore. That is the only 100% way to check and make sure that backup did in fact work.
Yes, Mom, that's the only way to really do it. But at the same time though, like we use Infrascale for our backups. I've never had a restore fail. So if I can go in and see that the file is there, I know that the file is there. I know the file history is there. Now, how far back I'm going to have to go into the file history to get the working file is a completely different question because I don't know when the file broke. But I know it's there.
Very good. All right, let's go ahead. In any last minute thoughts while we close this up, let's go ahead and start with James. Why don't you go ahead? Any lasting thoughts on anything that we may or may have not covered as far as servers today?
Well, I had a quick question for Adam, actually. Have you used the Active Directory in Synology yet?
I have not. We considered using it for one of our clients and getting rid of their server, but it was one of those things where I wanted to stick with what was familiar. So no, I haven't used it, but I know it's there.
Okay. I haven't used it either. I was just curious. It looked kind of interesting, but
No, not great. Now I got something else to play with.
You know,
Awesome.
and that was kind of what I had. In our case, it was a 20-user law office, and I'm not one to go, well, let's try something interesting on this side of the scale. So
yep.
I don't blame you there.
The Synology I have is too old to support it, so I don't have a way of testing it unless I test it at a client's location, which I don't want to do. So
it seems like the type of thing where you'd want to use your Microsoft server license to just kind of set up a small network in the office and check it out. Unless you don't have the tech. Why can't I think of the name for that right now?
Like Action Pack.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other things, James? Was that your last question?
I think that's it for me.
All right, good. Adam, what about you? Any last minute thoughts on server or anything we have not covered as of yet?
Nah, nothing that comes to mind.
Okay. Chris, any last thoughts?
Yes. If you're trying to look at a macro setup when it comes to dealing with users, another big thing that I didn't touch on that I probably should have is the Azure Active Directory and the Office 365 integration. So if you do have a client with an on-premise Active Directory server and they're using Office 365 for their mail and Word and all of that stuff, Azure Active Directory will tie those together so you can create a user on the server and it'll create it on the other side and vice versa. And same thing with disabling. If you disable it over here, it disables it over there. So it's just one more way to streamline things if you've got a larger company that you're dealing with where you need to worry about onboarding and offboarding time costs.
Awesome. Great. All right. So I think that will wrap up this particular show. And before we head on out, let me just say that if you would like to support what we're doing here, you can go to patreon.com/computer repair podcast. And I want to thank our newest Patreon supporters. We have Jason Miller, David Hodge, and Cody Richards. Appreciate the support. And if you have not yet, send me your email that you log into Facebook with so I can get you added to the secret Facebook group where we talk about some interesting things in a safe environment where there are no dumb questions and everybody is learning at a different pace, which is why we do this show, because as John Dubinsky would say, since he's not here, the one thing I know for sure is I don't know everything. Now that's for John. I never say that because I do know everything, but that's a Johnism. All right. So I'll tell you what, James, I really appreciate you coming out and stepping up and being a part of the show. And it was great to have you on. If you want to let people know where they can find out more about you, go ahead. And this is your time.
Well, you can go to my website, OurNerd.com, OurNerd.com. You can email me at james@OurNerd.com.
Awesome. Great to have you, man. All right. And Adam, if you'd let people know where they could find you at.
Sure. itproiowa.com, or you can email me directly, acarpenter@itproiowa.com.
Awesome. And Mr. Chris Carruthers, it's been, I don't even know how long, and you're all married and all kinds of stuff, new stuff now. But
Right.
Where can people find you at?
You know, the easiest way to find me is to go to patreon.com/computer repair podcasts, donate that $1 a month, and get yourself on the Facebook group, because I am in that Facebook group. Tag me and I will respond.
There you go. Awesome. Well, appreciate having each and every one of you here today, and great subject as always. If you'd like to come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/CRP Live. Join in on the conversation by hanging out in the chat room. You can send an email to podnutz@podnutz.com, and we will read those on the show. Or you can leave a voicemail and have your voice right next to ours at 734-335-1000. I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on the Computer Repair Podcast.